Crazy.
All right, so we are talking today about crushing our goals in 2021, and it doesn't say hitting your goals in 2021. So we are looking at the top 5 strategies of top producers on what they're doing this year to get into the production that they desire and really blow the ceiling off of it. So like I said, I value your time. I'm gonna run through this, but I want you to interject with questions, or if you need clarification on something, please unmute yourself. Don't even worry if you're interrupting someone else. Also, I will recommend you taking notes, just because there's some things that are not gonna be on the screen that I'm gonna say that I think may bring value to you. So let's get started. So the first one that I kind of want to make sure that we're right here is the first one is we want to really make sure you guys do have a plan in place. Make sure it's written. For Freedom members, we use a GPS tool, which I'll show you guys real quick. Make sure it's complete and very specific. So things like, hey, I'm going to make some phone calls. That's not very specific, right? Make sure it's printed and it's in your view every single day. And what I always recommend is treat it like a checklist. So we're going to show you a sample of a GPS in a minute. But basically, we want to use this plan every single week throughout the month. And we want to make sure that shiny object syndrome doesn't occur. One of the things, especially in the top producer world, people call us for a lot of different reasons. They call us to spend money on their product or their service. They want us to invest in different opportunities of lead generation. And the one thing that I found myself, or coaching a lot of top producers, is that you really are chasing a lot of different lead sources rather than focusing on the one that are your bread and butter. So the first thing I would definitely tell you is make sure you go back to your plan. If you do decide, hey, I want to invest in this lead generation process or tool, doesn't match up with your plan. And if it doesn't, you need to probably take something off of your plan and readjust, because if you keep adding onto your plate, it's just going to overflow and become really hazardous. So if you feel like you're overwhelmed in your focus on how you're gaining your leads, you may be doing too many things. If you do coach with us, you're definitely we're gonna evaluate that once a month and make sure you're kind of using that as a checklist. So this is a sample of the GPS. It's super simple. I don't believe that anything in business should be complicated, because we got enough going on in our world. And so the GPS, what it stands for is goal, priorities, and strategy. So it should have one goal, which should be your profit, right? So in this example, it's $80,000 in profit. The P is priority. There's 3 priorities. There's not 4, there's not 10. Those are 3 buckets where you feel like are going to be the highest focus points. I've seen people do these completely different. This example gives you listing focus, buyer focus, and database focus. But sometimes if you're expanding your team, maybe it would be expansion. So it'd be hiring as a priority, and training and mentoring that individual or that couple of agents. Maybe it is something more specific about networking or things like that. So every GPS that I work with is completely different. I've never seen one that's the same. One of the things I will tell you, an adjustment, 2020 has given us a different perspective as far as seasonality in your guys' business. Most of you on this call have blown the doors off your business last year, which is awesome. We expect 2021 to be a great year. We just don't know exactly what the future holds with the vaccination and the COVID process, right? So what we are recommending is this GPS generally is for a year. We recommend actually this only be a 3-month plan. And so that actually comes from a book, The 12-Week Year. I don't know if you guys have heard of that book. I'll share this on the screen if you can see it. It's really telling you that we need to be able to pivot and transition, kind of be more fluid with our goals, because in March going into April, we may need to adjust it. So in my opinion, if you're creating a 1-year plan, you may be using some effort and energy that may have to be adjusted, and it's kind of, and frankly, it's might be a waste of your time. So we recommend right now going with a 12-week GPS, which is a 3-month or first quarter plan. And so anybody that's coaching with me, that's what we're looking at. We're prioritizing those things so you can kind of chunk it down as you go. Any questions kind of about that process? Because that's that first step that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. Many of you don't have your GPSs completed yet, which I get. We're, what, 18 days in? And so we want to make this a priority so you can kind of have a written plan and make sure it is printed and you see it every day. So I'll pause for a second. Any specifics on that? Any questions on the first strategy of a top producer? It's really important, I think, that you have that written plan. And I won't call anybody out, but everybody just think about, do you have it written? Do you have it printed? And do you use it like a checklist? I've seen people laminate it. I've seen people just print it off and cross it off every month, but make sure you're using it as a priority list. And we call it the success list, because if not, you know, shiny object syndrome totally shows up in everybody's world. Okay?
Drew, I have to stop you for a second.
Of course.
Austin saying he can't get in. I wonder if anybody else can't get in. He said the password's not working.
Okay, let me.
Sorry, I didn't want to.
No, you're good. You're good. Let me invite him directly from.
There's cups in here, and there's some in this other shelf.
Deanna, I need a cup. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't hit. Oh yeah, I did. I hit record. Austin.
Thank you.
I'm hoping more emerge out of the basement.
Deanna, you're muted. Did you realize?
I love that.
It's okay. I just want you to know.
Danny, you're great. As long as, remember early on in the Zoom world, like you heard people like not wearing clothing? Wasn't that like crazy? So, right. So let's keep going as far as that is concerned. So part of this GPS is just making sure you have a priorities on your time. And one of the things I know as top producers, we're constantly putting fires out. And oh, by the way, we are at home and we have homeschooling, we have all this crazy stuff that we're dealing with. So I always put everything in visuals because I'm a visual kind of person. So when you're making your connections with your database, so you'll notice that I don't tend to say lead generation because the L word in my 15 years of real estate always gave me anxiety. So I always say that you're building relationships. This is a relationship business. This is not a house business, right? So one of the things that you're obviously going to be focusing on is reconnecting with everybody in your database. And so I think about this like a sandwich. So the first piece of bread is that preparation, right? Who am I going to call and what the heck am I going to say, right? So what you say to one of your best friends is going to be slightly different than obviously if you're calling your vendors in your database, right? So my recommendation is every morning, have a list prepped, right? 10, 12 people on that list. In fact, a lot of times I do this first piece of bread in the evening right before I kind of shut down for the day, right? So when I wake up and I head into the office to quote, start my connections, I've already got my list of people and I've got the notes of what I'm going to say. This is where I stalk Facebook a little bit. So I may go and look at some of my database people on Facebook, and if they went on a trip or if there's something exciting happened with their children, I make a note and I literally just use a blank piece of paper and I have that preparation list. I have what type of person they are, and I have a little bit of a warm introduction so I can start with a conversation about them, their family, their occupation, something fun they did recreationally. So that prep is super important. And then you just roll into the connections, right? Text, call. I don't know if you've seen this, but private messaging has been a huge transition. And a lot of people are using that to connect with people. So reach out to people through social media and do that connection. And then the last one is follow-up. One of the things that I tend to see is that a lot of real estate talks about lead generation, and top producers already have leads coming in for the most part. What we sometimes miss or slips through our fingers is that follow-up process, right? So what I would say is that that bottom piece of bread, that follow-up, is probably the most important. So if you're blocking time to do these connections, make sure you need all three of these. A lot of times when I've been coached or trained throughout the year, they only talk about the connections, the best script, the best dialogue, right? You can get through the conversation because you're a human. You're really connecting with other people. But the follow-up, the handwritten note, updating your database. If they tell you, hey, they're going to have surgery next week, or hey, they're going to Florida on vacation, that kind of stuff is the rich, fertile soil that goes into your database. Put that in the notes section. So when you follow up in another month or two, you can say, hey, how was that trip to Florida, right? That connection piece is the whole point of why we build databases and why we have such a high referral percentage, right? Almost 50% of most top producers' business comes from referral, and it's because of that connection piece through follow-up. So I wanted to give you that visual, so make sure you realize that. Of course, if I were to coach you on the best practices, this should happen in the morning. You have the highest energy, you have the highest focus, least shiny object, least fires to put out. But at the end of the day, it's about you figuring out what that connection looks like. So the next thing I want you kind of think about is you can't chase two rabbits inside that priority. So that comes from actually the one thing, a book that many of you may have read. And I'm going to just read literally two little sentences. This is on page 70. It says, you make doing what matters most a priority when your willpower is the highest. What taxes your willpower is implementing new behaviors, filtering distractions, and resisting temptation. So a lot of time when we want to make connection calls and we don't make that a priority, it's just because we have other things that are pulling our willpower away, right? And so one of the things that I would recommend, this is a system that I coach to, is we call it the 4 Lego stacking system. So a lot of people go, how do I time block? Well, first of all, you leave white space in your schedule, meaning you don't block yourself out forever, right? And I think you need to keep it somewhat loose. Some other coaches want you to basically block every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. I don't think that's realistic in a real estate world because we're so fluid, right? When we get a phone call, we have to go, we gotta go, right? We gotta make a priority on where the business is coming. But think about it, I kind of make this basketball reference. Think about the NCAA concept. So new business is that the connection sandwich. That's the first highest priority of your blocking of time. And then you're going to deal with your current business, right? Your home inspections, your meetings, obviously trainings or anything like that. And then then you're going to go on appointments, obviously preferred that you go on new appointments as a priority. But you know that this is a crazy multiple offer world. You're showing buyers tons of houses, not getting them, having to take them back out. We understand that, but appointments. And then make sure you're doing that admin follow-up of what you didn't get finished for the day, right? So think of that in those simple blocks. And they could be, and there's no time parameter, right? If you don't have appointments and you don't have a lot of admin, obviously the NC is going to have to really fill up more space. So I'm not going to coach you to be so specific on your calendar, but I want you to think of a model that's simple where you can go, what 4 priorities do I need to do to accomplish my one thing, which is to make connections and build more business, all right? So that's kind of a strategy that I want you guys to be aware of. All right, let's go into the second strategy to crush your 2021 goals, having a pipeline. And more now than ever, I've probably preached to have a pipeline if those of you have coached with me for probably the last, 3 to 4 years. But I would tell you 2021 is where we got to dig in and use our pipelines at a higher level. And those of you that are guests or that are new to coaching with me, that is a huge indicator on if you're going to crush your goals, hit your goals, or slip behind with what your goals are. So really, a lot of us are visual, so I'll kind of give you an illustration of a visual pipeline, and then we also have a digital pipeline. I like a hybrid version. I actually use both. So I have a digital one, which I'm going to show you guys, but I also have visual ones because I like to see and move these parts and pieces around. So I'm going to ask you kind of a couple questions. Right now, do you know how many leads you currently have? Like, could you be able to rattle that off? Right, as a top producer, they know what their pipeline looks like and they know the numbers behind that. Do you rank them by quality? We all know we get leads, and then once we dig deeper, sometimes they're not as great a quality as we'd hope, right? Maybe their credit score is not great, or maybe they have to transition, getting a divorce, and they're not going to put their house on the market for a few months. So we use an ABC system. A is the highest quality. They're in your car. The sign's going in the front yard for sale in a couple weeks. B, and then C is going to be that fresh lead. You don't really know much about them, right? Maybe you got it from an open house. You're still trying to get with them and see if they even have an agent. Maybe not even sure if they're pre-qualified, things like that. And then the last question is, do you know how many pipeline leads you need to maintain your goals? Right, so all three of those things we're going to really cover real quick, because I want to make sure you have a clear path as far as what your pipeline and how you want to use it to make an impact in your business. I want to make sure that you're also reviewing your pipeline every week, right? So you should have it either visually in front of you, and you should be moving it around weekly. You should also be using a digital one if you're using that, and prioritizing and adding that, right? B, if you do coach with me, I review those. I'm going to look at what you've added, what ranking you're kind of moving up to the top, because A's are what's going to transition you into obviously transactions. So are you building a business with a one-lane highway, or are you building it with multiple lanes? See, that's why I think you got to know the size and the depth of your pipeline. So the size of it is the total number you have. And then the depth of it is how many do you have per month, per quarter. So I'll kind of give you a visual of the visual one. It's literally a dry erase board, and we have magnetic dry erase kind of magnets that go on the top. And so if you're looking at, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Inside one of these cards, if you're doing a visual board, is that you obviously want to have the client's name, their expected price, their expected list or under contract date, the source, the lead quality, and if they're a buyer, if they're a seller, or if they're a combo, right? So one of the things is that we need to make sure we're asking the question about when we expect for them to want to buy or want to sell. We don't want to guess. We want to have as accurate of information as possible. So when you're doing the listing or the buyer consultation, it's really important that you really ask that question. Hey, Mr. Buyer, you know, based on what we were talking about today, when do you want to physically move into your house? All right, May. You need, every month needs a pipeline, right? So it's not a bad thing if they say October or November or December. You got to have leads in every quarter of your transactions, right? So make sure you're doing that. Also inside this, because we're going to show you how many leads you need in your pipeline, put the blank ones on there, right? So yes, fill in the blanks of all the leads you have, but let's say you have your goal is to have 20 leads in your pipeline, and you have 10 physical people to write on and put their contact information in there. Those other 10 need to be showing up on your visual board blank. And the reason why I want you to do that is I want you to have a visual example of filling in, of taking those Legos and starting to fill in the blank. It's your RAS, which is your reticular activator, which is part of your brain, is going to seek that out. And also the thing is, a lot of people, I don't know if you're like me, but I like to cross off lists. I like to see progress, right? And sometimes in real estate, we feel like we're going and going, and we're not seeing that future progress. Well, the cool thing is, if you see 10 blank spots, and by the end of the week, you filled 5 more leads in that pipeline, so you only have 5 left, it gives you literally a chemical change in your body, and it gives you some positive motivation to get there. So creating that visual board with what you have and what your goal is with our blank is a huge strategy on kind of making sure you set expectations. And it's also a sense of accountability. Those of you on the call that are teams, your teammates all need to do these same visual boards. And it's great to have a meeting, whether it's visual, like standing in front of it, or in digital, like a Zoom, and going through that, right? And make sure you have accountability that says, hey, team member 1, hey, you're short a couple leads in your pipeline. What can we do to help you get those leads filled, right? Helping support that vision and have some peer accountability is a huge motivator, especially right now. This is the digital one. This is the one that most of us, if you've coached with me for a while, I've always used. I'm going to actually click on this and give you a couple examples. I love this thing. This is a thing that I use to make sure I prioritize who I'm talking to, prioritize maybe if somebody slips through the cracks, right? Somebody that maybe I talked to 6 months ago and I'm like, crap. You know, if you've ever had a moment where you go on social media and you see somebody so excited because they purchased a home and they didn't purchase a home from you, and you're like, crap, I forgot to follow up with them, and now they bought a house from Susie, right? It's frustrating, and you're really more frustrated at yourself. So one of the first systems I would recommend is something like this. So if you kind of look at it, it's nothing more than a fancy spreadsheet, but it's broken into 2 parts. It's broken into a pipeline tracker and then a transaction tracker. Please understand that your houses that are listed for sale in MLS right now, under contract and closed, are not a pipeline. Those are under a transaction. Those deals are happening. Some may fall out, but those are happening, right? They've already existed, whether it's 60, 90 days ago. And so that's not what I'm talking about. As a pipeline, this is people that have verbally said to you, yeah, I think I want to buy, or yeah, I think I want to sell with you, right? And we know the ranking A, B, C. We know that there's different levels, right? We put the contact information, any notes about that. Lead sources, huge, because we want to see, when we're going to talk about it a little bit later, are we really focusing on the lead sources that are giving us the highest quality? And then that expected list date. I color code those by quarter, right? We know that you need to have a certain amount of leads per quarter for you to hit that. And what I always call a real estate roller coaster is that I would have transactions 1 month, and then I have 2, and then I'd have 10, and then I have 4. And it was this constant roller coaster. Well, one of the cool things about the pipeline is you can see the predictability of that roller coaster. What are some gaps? What are some spots where I need to fill that in, right? It also gives us an opportunity to see if our average sales price is dropping, right? If we set our goals based on, let's say, 250, 280, and in this example, it's 303, then we're ahead of the game, right? We either don't have to sell as many houses because we're going to hit our volume and our commission goal, or we understand that our average price point has increased, which is awesome. It also gives you some cost of sale. Cost of sale is what your broker charges you, whether it's a flat fee or a percentage. And it's also a team split. So those of you out there with teams, if your buyer's agent is on like a 50-50 split, that is a cost of sale. That agent, which is obviously justified, they're getting that 50%, but it's costing inside that sale. We need to know what those numbers are, because running a business as a top producer, it's really important, right? My favorite column is the income column, right? I can see a projection, 34,000. This is the buyer column. I can see 104. I can see where I am on track or off track as far as what my goals are. And then it's at the bottom. It really tells us where we are with a breakdown of buyer, seller, and how many leads we have. And if I coach you, I look at that. I want to see you're growing your pipeline, because think about it. If you have a buyer right now, and this buyer goes under contract, you're going to cut that and you're going to move it down to under contract. Well, guess what? What just happened is now you don't have one in your pipeline. It just evaporated, right? So now I've got to find another one to replace it. So the opportunity is always to maintain that pipeline and that transaction. And then, of course, current listings, under contracts, closed. Another one, lost opportunities. If you go on an appointment or you work with a buyer and something just doesn't work out, maybe credit or something like that, you need to still track that, right? So at the end of the year, we can see what your fallout is. A lot of times we get frustrated. We don't get a listing that we thought we would get. We thought we'd crush the appointment, and then they went with their best friend, right? As far as a realtor, make sure you're tracking your lost opportunities to see, is it skill? Is it something we need to change in your presentation? Or is it just a condition of what happened and that's something that you really can't fuss about, okay? So make sure that you guys are really looking at, as far as your pipelines, really digging deep into that. And I really think, again, because of 2021, we don't know that it's going to be this huge banner year. We think it will be, but it's based on the size of your pipeline. So many people coach to lead gen and database. The name of the game right now is pipeline. And you'll see it when teams are larger, when people are buying leads off Zillow. It's because what are they trying to do? They're trying to fill their leads pipeline. So how do you determine the number inside that pipeline? How do we determine what those blank spots on that visual board would be, right? So you're going to take your units, what your goal for that quarter is, and multiply it by 2, right? So if I'm supposed to sell 12 houses in the first quarter, I need 24 leads on that board ASAP. And I want to make sure they're the highest quality ones that we can. I would rather you focus on those A's and B's. So if you have all C's, you have 24 C leads, I don't know if that's going to get you there. So I would even dig a little deeper is, yes, I know what my units for my pipeline need to be, but I want to make sure they're highest quality. We all are going to have a crap ton of C's. That's a normal thing. When you look at a pipeline board, I should see probably double the amount of C's, small amount of B's, and then even a smaller amount of A's, because remember, the A's are about to convert. They're about to flip to that transaction board, and I want to make sure you know that that's healthy, that's normal. But those C's have to cultivate up to a B and the B to an A, right? So what if I don't have that amount of leads right now? You may be freaking out. You may be doing your math right now and going, oh crap, I don't have that. Well, it's January 19th, and we got to get that. You got to maintain that, right? Not hit that and then it goes up and down. You got to maintain that. So if you don't have, example, if you don't have 24 leads in that pipeline right now, we got to get your foot on the gas, because if you hit your maintain goal in February, you're already off for first quarter, right? So one of the first things is you got to start connecting with those old leads. Pull everything out. Pull every scrap of paper. Go to your database, go to your phone, go to every private message you've ever sent, and reconnect to see if they're a real viable option for you in 2021, right? You may have counted them out. You may have thought that you don't need that, or that you didn't think they're serious, but make sure that you connect with every crumb that you have. Double your database connections each week, right? So if you do have that connection sandwich going, make sure you're looking at the number of connections. If your kind of normal rhythm is like 5 or 10, you may need to bump it up to 20 connections per day and then going into week, right? So just be realistic. And that doesn't mean you have to do it forever, right? We just need to get these leads in your pipeline. And if we need to double down in your database and your connections, it doesn't have to be, you have to do that for the whole year of 2021, but we got to get this filled. And then also make sure you're connecting with vendors and asking for referrals. I coach to this a lot. I don't think in Richmond, we ask our vendors to do enough. Vendors are all kinds of vendors, right? Home inspectors, lenders, people, nail salons, hair salons. We give them business. We provide them an income, and that's something that we need to have some accountability conversations with. And I can coach you one-on-one towards that. But asking your vendors what their goals are, and then what type of referral number can they give you. Lender, right? You give them 24 deals, 50 deals a year. How many physical leads have they given you? In my opinion, a vendor has 2 jobs. A vendor has 2 jobs. It's to service the client that we gave them. And the second is to help build our businesses together so we both have more referral business, right? And sometimes they just wait for that second thing to happen. They obviously take priority in our customers or our clients, but we've also got to build that second thing and build that organically. So dig into that. Ask them where they can help you fill your pipeline in. Be transparent with them. Say, hey, I have a pipeline goal of 24. I currently have 20. I need 4 additional leads. Who do you know that I can add to that lead pipeline, right? Have some accountability conversation. It's a business conversation. And top producers do that. Top producers have a circle of people that understand that they have to hit numbers and they have to hit goals and priorities based on what their goals are, right? And I want you to think about real estate as a dial, right? You kind of can twist and turn it. And the one thing that I would say is your database, huge. You know that. You've been in real estate for 5 minutes. You know that people start to preach that really hard. But the one thing is I want your database to be clean. I don't want it to be filled with people that have fluff, that aren't going to really help build your business. So one of the things when I start to work with someone, I look at their database, we want quality over quantity, right? I would rather you have 450 people that you know that you invest in and that you connect with rather than 4,000 people, right? If you have a group in there that's maybe you're farming a neighborhood of 500, I get that. That's kind of a separate patch. What I mean is the people that you interact with on a weekly, monthly basis when you're doing that connection sandwich, make sure it's of quality. If you pull someone up and you're supposed to call him today and you don't know who the heck he is and you don't know that name, you may either, number one, need to invest in that relationship more, or we may need to move him out of your database. And a lot of times I don't necessarily delete them. We just use a tag or a group called D for delete, right? We're not going to really delete him because, you know, he may come back to life. He may give us an opportunity later, or you may need to add some leads to your pipeline. So you may need to cultivate that relationship, but really be conscious about your database as far as the quality. I always say it's kind of like a garden. You got to weed the garden every year, right? And make sure that all those huge databases don't choke the relationships that you really want to focus on. Leads pipeline, we've covered that, so I'm not going to beat that down, but make sure you kind of know that that is a dial you have to constantly be looking at least weekly. And then appointments, right? Knowing what those goals are. And if you coach with me, you know there's a simple calculator that I do. It spits right out. And so if you're, let's say it's one appointment a week, a lot of people at 100, if you want to make net 100 grand, it's basically one appointment a week. And what I want to make sure is you realize that an appointment is not a meeting and a meeting is not an appointment. What I mean by that is appointment is somebody signing something, a new buyer agency agreement or a listing. You may go on meetings, right? You may go out with friends, or you may go out with sphere of influence. Those are kind of meetings, right? You're warming and nurturing those relationships. Also, don't count the person more than once, right? So you meet a buyer, they sign the buyer agency agreement, you count that as an appointment. You go out 2 weeks and you show them a house, right? And then they decide to buy that house. You already counted that as an appointment. And the reason why I want you to do that is so your conversion rate stays accurate. And then transactions, right? We want to look at that in a trend line in a quarterly fashion so we can see how your transactions are going. All right, so we're kind of halfway through. One of the things, priority 3 to crush your goals is have a pulse on your trends. In my opinion, or the question I ask is a 1 year a trend? So 2020, a lot of you had one of your best years ever, but is that a trend, right? Is that just the COVID effect? Is that because interest rates are low? Is that because inventory is obviously shrinking like crazy? Or is that a trend that you can see continue in your business? Make sure you don't realize that sometimes some trends are a mirage. You get that good, comfortable feeling that you have great success and you think that's a trend, right? So we got to make sure we understand what the key numbers are and you track those numbers and really look at trend reports. So if you coach with us, we create a trend report for you. It looks like this. We provide this to you and we pull it directly from MLS and we're looking at your trend lines. So what we do is that we look at last year's trends, right? If you sold 12 houses in January and then 2021, we're on the 19th of the month and you've only sold 6, you're now behind the trend, right? And we know, again, 1 year isn't a trend, but if that's all we have, if you're newer or if that's your best year, we want to go probably 3 years back. I'll kind of skip. We'd like to see a 3-year trend line, right? So in a perfect world, I'd like to see what you did in 19, what you did last year, and what you're doing currently in 2021. Because we want to see, is that moving, is that changing? So obviously the basics, units, price points, lead sources, things like that, cost of sale, those are important because are you spending a lot of money to get those leads? Some of you may be using online lead sources, right? Well, if you're paying them 30, 40%, plus you have to pay your brokerage, you could be making literally like $10 on a transaction. So it looks like your trend is, yes, you're hitting your volume and your units goal, but your income trend is going down. You're actually making less. So we got to be careful about that. And then if you have team members, if you're a team, you got to look at their trends as well, right? You got to see, are they new to the team, and what can they do to help offset your trend? What I mean is, if you're not hitting your numbers, if you hired another buyer's agent or a showing assistant, could that help your trend go up, right? And react to those faster, because we got to look forward 60 to 90 days. So having a pulse on that. Every business out there looks at trend reports, right? Everything from marketing, to digital marketing, to financial services, tons of them do, okay? I want to pause for a moment because we covered a few things. Obviously, we covered your plan, we covered your pipeline, and we covered your trend report. Before we finish up and talk about the last two, what are some comments, anything that you guys want to pipe in, give clarification for, anything that doesn't make sense? No dumb question. I know I tend to talk a little fast. Do you see those as kind of priorities to get your goals crushed for 2020? Anyone questions? You feeling good? I'll keep going if you're ready. We'll keep going then. All right, the next one. Oh, this is I love this part. You skate where the puck is going, right? Trend lines show you where the puck is going, right? If you're not having a great first quarter, where are we going to anticipate what second quarter is? So first quarter and third quarter, typically when I'm looking and analyzing real estate businesses, those are the weakest, are the most challenging quarters. So why do you think that is? I'm curious. Why do you think first quarter is generally people's weak moment? And also, like, when they hit July, August, why do you think third quarter is? Anybody have an idea behind that? Curious.
Drew, I know. It's Austin.
Oh.
It is because we just talked about it. Typically, our second and fourth quarter is our busiest from production standpoint, because our first and third quarters are lower. From production, we focus on lead gen there, trying to ramp up business. So it follows that cycle or 12-week period.
Yeah, because we can't chase two rabbits, right? So when we have 20 closings in 1 month, we go to hell with lead gen or connections, right? Because we're literally putting fires out. We're literally going to home inspections. We're literally going on listing appointments like crazy. And let's be honest, when you fall on the couch after a long day of listing appointments and buyer consultations and all that, who the hell wants to get more of them? You're just like, I don't want it anymore. I'm so tired, right? So one of the things is that trend report shows us where you got to dig in, right? So if you're normally calling 5 or 10 people a day, and we know we're about to hit a quarter where you're just not usually as strong financially, we need to dig in for just a short period of time, 30, 60 days, and dig in a little bit harder. Or you need to get leverage, right? So if you are building teams, that's where maybe you hire somebody. I find it very interesting. People hire when they're slow, when they really need to be hiring when they're busy. That's the most interesting thing, is they're like, oh my God, we had such a great month. Now we need to hire a buyer's agent. All right, well now you don't have any business to give to the buyer. So now it's a whole ramp up period. So it contradicts a lot of what we know from almost like a stamina standpoint, but make sure you're aware of those trend lines for sure. So thanks, Austin, for that. The fourth thing I kind of really is, we're making good money right now. A lot of us are hitting goals. We're really hitting some financial goals. But this is when we have to show up as a business owner. One of the things real estate agents, and I'm guilty of it, so it's not preaching to you guys, it's pointing the finger at myself, is that when I'm making a lot of money, I sometimes I don't put priority in tracking it properly, right? Because I know more money is going to come in. I know that, yes, I had a great month, so let's spend money on billboards, and let's spend money on this and that and that. So I'm literally throwing money at things, but honestly, because I'm not tracking it. I'm not giving it its focus. So if you've ever coached with me, I'm obsessed with this book called Profit First. It, number one, is a simple book to read. I don't like complicated. I know there's a couple CPAs in the house. I'm not a CPA, right? I don't have that financial background, but I can get this book and I can understand the really cool concepts behind it, and it totally makes sense on how we focus. So I'm going to go through literally a 5-minute what the book is. So if you don't ever read the book, which I want you to read the book, but if you don't make it a priority to read the book, I want you to at least know the essence of it, because hitting your goals and crushing them for 2021, you got to really focus on this tracking your money piece, because you're going to make good money in 2021. If you coach with me, I'm sure you are. Yet you got to make sure you understand that there's profit first is a priority. So the book basically kind of talks about actually habits in a health world. He talks about the simple fact that we have we have lack of willpower, right? So think about that plate. And so his 4 concepts are: use small plates, serve sequentially, remove temptation, and enforce a rhythm, right? So, and it's really interesting when he connects all of that to health. So it's the small plates is that you basically put all your income into an account. It's that serving tray. It's that main account that you go in, but then you have to serve it sequentially out, meaning you have to physically move it and allocate that to different percentage accounts, and make sure that's a priority. You don't get a direct deposit. You don't deposit a commission check and let it sit in that main account. The minute it hits that main account, you got to disperse it to the 4 accounts, which we'll talk about in a second. And make sure you remove that temptation. We call it a profit account. We don't call it a savings account, right? We want to switch that mindset. The savings is future, right? Retirement, right? We want a profit account now. We want to build a profit now and build off of that, rather than when we're 60, 70, 80 years old and then we start using that savings and we don't have the abundance mindset. We just don't have the energy to do it, right? We want to have profit now so you guys you can really go on vacation and invest in yourself and your family with the memories that you have now in the age that you currently are. Right? And the 4th one is that rhythm of enforcement, getting to the point where these twice a month allocations, you get in a rhythm where you're just like a corporate business and you allocate your salary to yourself. You pay yourself just like anything else. And he interestingly recommends doing it on the 10th and the 25th day of each month. He doesn't recommend it on the 1st or the 15th. There's strategic things in the book where he talks about there's some method to the madness, which I think is pretty important. So the last piece of kind of tracking that and making sure you as the top producer, make sure you have 4 bank accounts. He's talking about it in the book. Basically, bank account number 1 is profit, and it should not be in your main bank account. In my example, I work with, I am Wells Fargo, is all my bank funds are in there, but I have my profit account in a credit union. It is a pain in the butt for me to get my profit out. I don't have a debit card and I need to actually move the money. I have to write a check and move it into there. I can't use an app and just transfer it in, right?
Wow.
You need to make sure it's in there. It's locked down like a vault. It's a profit account, right? And so making that differentiation is important, because we've all had, I'll just say I've had a moment where I'm like, man, I need to pay the mortgage payment, right? And what do? Is I transfer it from my savings, AKA profit account, and move it into my regular account, right? I was really great about putting in savings. And then when times got rough or times got a little shaky and I didn't have a transaction coming up, I slid it right back into my regular life living account, right? It also has a personal account. And then I made a little modification to he talks about taxes specifically, which is that account for business expenses. But I really think you need to have a separate account for a marketing and lead generation account. One of the things that I will talk to you about in a second is that we don't treat our businesses like large corporations. Large corporations have a marketing budget. They spend money every month, right? Because they know as they spend more money, they attract new clients, that increases their leads. So there's 3 accounts: personal, a marketing account, and then a bank account. 10% of your annual gross income goal comes from that. And that is not a percentage that I made up. It actually comes from a book that is tried and true for real estate agents. And it is this called the MREA book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And so if you're looking on page 157, it gives you a simple chart. I love simple, people. I love simple. It basically says, based on your volume, 6 million, 10 million, 16 million, 26 million, 40 million, gross commission income, all the way across the board, you'll see lead gen 10%. So regardless of your volume, whoever's on this call, you may say, I'm at a 6 million, or I'm at 20 million, right? It doesn't matter. There's consistently that you need to have 10% of yearly investment in your lead gen budget. And so I really think about it. I did a little Googling. Literally, Nike spends $3.7 billion in 2019 on their marketing. Why? Everybody knows what Nike is, right? Everybody knows what it stands for, what the logo is, where you can buy it, what the price is. Why do they still invest in marketing? Because they know it attracts new clients. They know that consistency is the key. And so do you have a marketing budget? Do you know what your lead generation marketing budget is every single month? And do you spend it? One of the things that I tend to see is we sometimes starve our business, right? We make good money this month. We put it in our account. We go buy new cars. We do things for our kids. But do we reinvest it into our business? Sometimes I see we don't. And so making sure you create that discipline approach. So obviously, if you're going to make 100 grand as an example, that's $833 a month that you need to be spending on attracting new business. So do you know what you spend every month? Do you know, is it working? Is it actually giving you leads? Are you spending, I literally, 5 years into my business, I did shopping carts, $3,500 on flipping shopping carts. So when you went into Kroger, you saw my happy face in front of it. I didn't get one lead from that, right? It was just ego. It was just me wanting to see myself at the damn Kroger, right? So make sure you're holding your money accountable, but you've got to track it. And if you're going to be a true top producer for 2021, you got to realize that you got to invest in yourself and in your businesses. And sometimes I think we're relying, and again, it doesn't have to be marketing based like billboards. If you're going to invest, if your relationship business, it's investing in your database. It's taking people out to lunch. It's maybe writing more thank you notes. It's delivering small gifts and packages to them to show them that you care about them, right? It doesn't have to be a billboard. It doesn't have to be marketing in the sense that it has to be a flyer or a postcard. It has to be a connection piece. So lead generation and that marketing kind of run together in that connection piece. Any questions?
Drew, can I? Yeah, Drew, can I chime in there for a second on a question? Do you have favorite COVID safe tactics to do here? I think that's probably a question that hasn't been spoken enough as far as I feel like 2020 was a lot of, well, when COVID's over, we'll revisit the budget, or when this is over. And now it's obviously going on 11 months or whatever it's been, and seemingly here for at least the foreseeable future, despite what we hear and read. Do you have favorite strategies so we don't have to kind of hit the reset button whenever we get out?
Yes,
free again?
Absolutely. Yeah, and the good thing is that COVID gives us an opportunity that we may have to do more digital things like this, which honestly cost us less money, right? If we do client events, we physically did the really nice client events physically with, 20, 40, 50 people, and you're buying food and alcohol, that gets expensive, right? So there are some strategies where people are doing a lot of virtual stuff, whether it's wine tasting, whether it's playing bingo, some of this weird kind of fun, quirky stuff where you do maybe a raffle or different things like that. And we actually have a whole training on that digital or virtual kind of lead gen events, what we're going to be doing in the next month or so. But it's going to still, you need to make sure you're spending money on your people, right? If you do a free Zoom event, that's great. But then are you delivering stuff to their house? Putting things on people's front porches needs to come back. Looking at social media, and they're having a new baby, by the way, congratulations. and delivering a package and saying, hey, that's awesome, right? They get a new puppy. Like, you need to be really thinking about, so your money may be spent more one-on-one, right? Maybe you're going to take 1 or 2 people out to coffee or to drinks, or maybe you're dropping things off. So it may not be big budget things. Like, I would say before COVID, we'd spend $2,000 on an event, right?
Right.
2021. I'm coaching people to plan events in COVID version. And then if the world does crack back open and we're kind of go into that, then we can go in that arena. But you're going to need to start thinking about how you can spend your money in a way that attracts the right type of leads. So
Cool.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
And then where do we track our tools? The interesting thing is, if we're truly being business owners, we have to start tracking it correctly. So QuickBooks, I mean, self-employed, it's like $17 a month, right? So you guys cannot afford not to have something. And QuickBooks, I've used it for years, but it's simple now, right? It's connected. If you use one credit card for your business, which you should, according to those 4 buckets that we looked at, right? You should be swiping that, and then it literally can create rules, and it automatically does it. So I look at QuickBooks about 15 to 20 minutes a month. I go in there, look at everything that's in there. Is the rule correct? Is it a office expense? Was it a marketing expense? What was it? And then I'm done, right? So it is an easy way. QuickBooks is an easy way to track it. And if you don't like tracking stuff like that, use QuickBooks, because it does 95% of it for you. And that's something I'll tell you, my operations manager, Denise, she inputs the stuff that doesn't auto in. Like if I paid cash for something, or somebody else, I purchased off of a different card, I'm like, crap. I send her a text and say, please add this to QuickBooks, right? Be aware of that. Mint app is a personal app. It's more for home budgeting. That's great, because sometimes, again, we have that personal account, and then we all get kind of, I don't know about you, but Amazon loves my house. So we spend money on Amazon, and I'm like, whoa, we're getting a little crazy here. And then I have a financial coach. And so she gave me a spreadsheet that we work on. At the bottom of the screen, I'm happy to share the screen. But I pay her $300 a month to kick my ass, to basically look at my bank accounts, look at my spending habits. And she says, really, Drew, you're spending $360 on Starbucks? I'm like, crap. So guess what? I bought a Keurig and I made that happen, right? So make sure you have accountability to that. But we have a household budget. My wife gets her nails done. My wife gets her hair done. Different things like that. The small expenses add up quick. It's crazy. Those $20 subscriptions on everything start adding up really quick. So those are just a few examples of some tracking tools. And it is not uncommon for me, if I coach you, for me to ask you, so let's look at your profit and loss in QuickBooks. You email me the PDF and we look at it. And there's no judgment. We all are growing together. But if you're going to be highly profitable and a top producer in 2021, you got to watch your money, because unfortunately, you could be spending a lot of money in 2021, making a lot of money in 2021, and end up with no profit at the end. And 2 years later, you're going to be like, crap, I wish I really would have taken priority in my time and in my business to track my stuff. Been there, done that. So again, not preaching. It's just one of those 5 priorities we got to focus for 2021. And the last one, you got to know I was going to cover that, is to focus on your mindset. And one of the things, I don't know if you've read The 12-Week Year. I really think this is there's so many great books out there, but this book talks about that we really just can't get ahead of ourselves. We think about these big goals for 2021 and what we're going to do for events and how we're going to crush our goals. But it starts with these simple concepts. Each week obviously connects to each quarter, and each quarter connects to each year. And so I'm going to just end with this last little point, and this is on page 20 if you do have this book. It says, vision is the starting point of high performance. You create things twice, first mentally, then physically. The biggest barrier to high performance is not the physical manifestation, but the mental creation, right? So we got to realize that most of us, if not all of us on this call, are very driven, highly successful professionals in the real estate space, right? right? You wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be coaching with me if you weren't. And yet, you got to realize that it is about that mindset. And so make sure you're investing time in that, right? So I do a Mindset Monday every Monday. We have our closed group for our members. I'm a big journaler. I don't know about you guys. I got to tell you, it took me a few years to get on that, but I have a journal that I write in every morning, and it's a huge opportunity for, honestly, I read some of these. I was looking at something back from 2016 the other day, and how young I was, just how naive I was about business. So you're going to evolve and you're going to grow in 2021, but you've got to have a reference point. And then also reading or listening to podcasts. I know not all of us love to crack open a book. We have a crap ton of stuff to do every day, but listening or looking at podcasts for 20 to 30 minutes, it enriches you. I will give you one word of caution on that last one, is don't podcast and read yourself to death. Because 2021 is an implementation of what you're learning and of what you're growing with. So I read book after book, and I do, but I have to realize that the book is great or the podcast is amazing. But number one, is it giving me too many shiny objects, right? Is it getting me so stimulated that I'm bouncing around 15 different places? Or am I going to take that one podcast that jacked me up, that got me excited, am I going to implement it? Am I going to run it all the way to the finish line from the start to the end? Because if not, it's just, you're educating yourself, but you're not implementing anything. You're just doing that as a hobby. You're not actually executing the plan, right? So if you are reading a book and there's some amazing thing that you circle or highlight or you want to implement in your business, you got to implement it. And then not read 16 more books, right? So make sure that you focus on that mindset piece, because I think 2021 is going to be a killer year. And I think we're all going to have high success. Yet what we do now in January and how we build this out is going to really impact us probably the next 3 years, right? Because we know that real estate comes in cycles. We know we're at a high right now. We know that there's multiple offers. There's no inventory. Prices are crazy high. We're not even having home inspections, and we're disregarding appraisals. There is going to be a breaking point, and right now is you really got to realize that this is the time to reap what we sow, right? We've got to realize that this is the cool part about our business, is that we can make a lot of money, but we got to be able to make sure we're business owners doing it. And so the 5 strategies that I want to make sure that you kind of come away with today are those, because we've got to realize that there's no quick silver bullet to this whole process. It takes hard work, but you guys are all very determined people. So if you have any questions, speak up. I did want to give you a little update on some trainings we have. We have one more, actually have 2 more trainings this month. If you're members, you obviously get emails for this. We have the Market of the Moment. I don't know if all of you guys have ever attended that. A lot of people see value in it. It's where I go into MLS and we look at the trends every month from the previous month. So we literally go in and we look at area numbers, we look at average price points, we look at days on market, because it's not all the same in every market. You know that, right? So what's happening in Henrico is completely different than Chesterfield or than Powhatan. So this one tomorrow, we're actually doing it on the 9 a.m. tomorrow. We're actually doing a year review. So we have the whole data of 2020. So I'm actually taking it and running it and segmenting it out so we can see what really happened in 2020. We know we had a great year, but again, do we see trends, and can we duplicate those trends in 2021? And then we're also doing on January 27th, make an offer they can't refuse. It's that advanced. We did a really great negotiations workshop a couple months ago. This one's diving deep into multiple offers. What we're seeing, some strategies that are working so you can actually win some transactions. And then we've got branding and some really cool stuff happening. I'm talking to a guy, actually, if you're doing the 30-day social media challenge with me, I'm getting that gentleman to talk to us about his social media. He's a large team out of Florida. And so he's going to be Zooming with us. I believe we're looking at March for him to come join us and give us some tips and tricks on how he's killing it in social media. So that is kind of the wrap up. It's 10:02. I want to respect your time because I know you guys need to go sell some real estate. But if you have any additional questions, I'll stay on for a few minutes, and I'll also make sure I send you the recording and the presentation so you can kind of dive in. Otherwise, peace out. I'll see you guys either tomorrow or later this week. Thank you guys for joining us, and I hope you got value out of it, and have a great day.
Thanks, Drew. That was awesome.
Bye,
Hey,
guys.
Drew,
Yeah.
can you go back to just that last page? Because I think I'm not on board with all your calendar events. I just want to see.
Yep, sure. Let me share my screen one more time. How are you, Sunshine?
Good.
How's Fredericksburg doing today?
Good. So I was going to talk about how we could challenge to look at our market too.
Yeah, that would be cool. Could
Yeah.
when we do that, could you share screen and give us a little update? Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great to compare. So the dates we have set are these four.
Got
I'm
it.
working on getting somebody set up to help us with profit and loss. So we'll get that date set up, but we want to make sure everybody knows how to read a profit and loss, really start to analyze those. My social media guy, I think we're going to lock that down, so I'm excited about him. And we're also getting a guest speaker for branding yourself. So we'll be announcing who that speaker is. I think we got her lined up, but that'll be good for you guys to kind of see that.
Yeah, it is
A
good.
big listing one that we plan on doing that. The listing boot camp will be in March as well. So this is first quarter. So she'll get us January, February, March. So we want to take a
That's good.
screenshot of that. And
I got
then
it.
as we put dates, we'll send them through a calendar invite, and we'll send you emails with the links.
Okay. Yeah, I need to get these on my calendar. I love the pipeline, Excel spreadsheet. And I always did love it. Like that was the big whoa when I first met you, was like, God, that just opened up my whole head, right? Of being able to see who's in there. And I think the most beneficial piece for me that was just astounding was to see like what kind of money could be down the road when I'm looking at the pipeline, and then the dollars down there, right? Because I never looked at clients.
Yeah.
Never looked at them as dollar signs. I was just,
Well, I don't know if you do that, you're not.
I know.
But yeah, I think you're running a business. You'd have to.
Right. But, yeah, and I think that's important, because I am at a point where I do have to sometimes make a decision. I mean, I found it to be callous when I first got into real estate. Like I should be just as interested